Level 1. A late-night call to Ohio. At 2 in the morning, Matthew makes a phone call that no one ever actually wants to make. His mother, Eleanor, picks up on the second ring, just as she does every single time. For a few seconds before the first word is spoken, you can feel that she has already braced herself for the worst possible news. A first-time DUI arrest, a damaged bumper, and one night in the holding cell. The incident ends with a standard $500 fine and mandatory driver safety classes on the weekends. It is the least threatening version of such a call, but it still lands much heavier than expected. His mother's immediate reaction isn't anger at all, but a sudden and deeply profound fear for her son. She asks 3 times how he is feeling before asking for a single detail about the charge. His father, Robert, says much less while sitting on the extension line during the call. Men in these situations are usually tight-lipped because they immediately try to find a concrete, practical way out of the crisis. They want to coordinate a ride home and secure a private defense attorney by 9 o'clock the next morning. By the time the next family Sunday dinner rolls around, the event is already starting to turn into just another story. His sister Sarah makes an awkward joke at first, causing a sudden hush, but quickly apologizes to everyone present. A month later, she brings it up again, and this time it brings only light laughter. The passage of time and the absence of new offenses gradually turn the late-night scare into a familiar family anecdote. At this initial stage, there is a special kind of forgiveness that completely disappears at the harsher levels to follow. None of his loved ones reevaluate their fundamental view of who he is or his future character. The incident is seen as a typical youthful mistake, no different than a bad breakup or wrecking a car in your teens. Most people take this kind of unconditional family support for granted, assuming it's guaranteed for everyone. However, it lasts only as long as the guilt is too minor to shatter your image. Level completed. Before we jump into the next tier of the simulation, drop a subscribe so you never miss a new story. Thanks for being here and watching now. Let's get back to it. Level 2. Rearrest and the shift to a pattern. A second arrest fundamentally alters the overall tone of every conversation long before any legal details are even discussed. Instead of an isolated incident, a clear pattern emerges that the family senses intuitively and acutely. This time, the charge involves possession of 50 grams of controlled substances, exceeding the limit for personal use. His mother no longer asks how he's feeling. Instead, she asks reserved, dry questions about what happened. That initial fear escalates into anxiety over who Matthew is actually becoming in life. His sister stops making jokes altogether and starts reaching out to her colleagues for leads on professional lawyers. She also scouts a specialized rehabilitation program that costs $3,000 a month to offer real help. In time, it becomes clear that this practical care is its own deep expression of genuine love and support. Around the kitchen table, quiet discussions now take place regarding the level of boundary setting required. Strict boundaries are discussed regarding financial help, babysitting his niece, and having alcohol around during the holidays. A lack of consensus between his parents creates the first noticeable rift in their previously solid relationship. His father refuses to act as a cosigner for bank loans or apartment leases. His mother asks careful questions, trying to gauge her son's state without putting direct pressure or throwing open accusations. It is a delicate skill that parents are forced to develop to avoid triggering an over-defensive reaction from their child. She tries to check in without making it feel like total, suffocating surveillance. You still feel that control as genuine care and suspicion begin to blur together. The line between a sincere desire to help and outright distrust becomes extremely hazy for everyone involved. The atmosphere at home grows tense, and every family gathering carries an underlying dread of the next bad piece of news. Legal fees for the initial lawyers hit $2,500, beginning to put a noticeable strain on the family budget. Everyone realizes that their old, quiet life is in the rearview mirror, and getting back to it won't be easy. Level 3. Physical harm and the shift in perception. An assault charge stemming from a bar fight fundamentally alters how people perceive you. Where your actions once harmed only your own health, There is now an actual victim in the picture. The family is forced to balance their heartache for you with genuine sympathy for a stranger who was injured. His mother visits him at the county jail before the bail hearing. A heavy silence fills the visiting room, vastly different from any family conversation they've had before. She stops asking questions and instead tries to come to terms with the terrible reality of what took place. Her face reveals a painful internal struggle between a mother's love and genuine fear of your behavior. Driving back home, his father quietly confesses to his daughter that he no longer recognizes his own son. It's not an act of cruelty, but a deep sorrow from realizing how much the criminal record is mounting. The family begins to split into different camps, even if no one states it out loud. Some relatives show up to every court hearing and put $150 into your commissary account each month. Others cut off contact entirely, deciding that the cost of supporting someone like this has become too high. Both stances are understandable responses to a complex question about the limits of accepting a loved one. Distant relatives act as a filter, revealing attitudes you never would have guessed before. An aunt from Chicago whom you rarely spoke to suddenly becomes your most frequent visitor in jail. A cousin who used to be your best friend simply stops replying to your text messages. The gradual drifting away happens without grand announcements, serving as a final answer on where they stand. Your circle of support shrinks to a handful of people who are willing to keep fighting despite public judgment. A $10,000 bail requirement means putting up family property and hiring a bail bondsman to pay the fee. Everyone understands that the legal process will be long and its consequences irreversible for your future. Level 4. A 5-year prison sentence and a new routine. A 5-year sentence in a state correctional facility fundamentally changes how your family perceives time. 5 years is no longer an abstract number. It becomes a concrete block of actual life passing by. Your young niece will finish elementary school by the time you could potentially walk free. You will watch your parents age exclusively through 4x6 photos delivered in envelopes through the mail. Prison visits turn into a tightly organized logistical process, governed by strict rules and schedules. His mother memorizes the dress code, schedule, and list of approved items with a cold, pragmatic precision. She does this to conserve her emotional strength for the several years of incarceration ahead. Emotion transforms into a daily routine, which becomes the sole coping mechanism for your entire family. His sister brings his niece only twice during the first year, before stopping those trips altogether. She feels a child shouldn't associate a prison visitation room with normal family quality time. You accept this decision without argument, understanding her reasoning, even though it hurts. By the second year, a relative stability sets in, and the initial crisis energy and panic completely evaporate. Constant late-night calls and frantic searches for lawyers give way to a quiet acceptance of a long, difficult reality. Love doesn't vanish, but it stops being vocal, as prolonged stress drains absolutely everyone. The financial toll is rarely discussed openly, but it severely impacts the entire family's well-being. Funding the commissary account, paying 21 cents a minute for phone calls, and buying gas for trips all add up. Making a 300-mile round trip every 2 months requires significant financial resources. These expenses fall primarily on his mother, who has stepped into the role of primary point of contact. They form a hidden tax that outsiders in everyday life don't even realize exists. Life behind bars becomes monotonous, while your connection to the outside world hinges on brief phone calls. Level 5. A decade apart and life moving on without you. Passing the 10-year mark triggers a painful process as the world adapts to your long-term absence. Life on the outside keeps moving forward regardless of whether you are ready for it. Your niece has turned into a teenager who knows you only through stories told by other family members. She was too young at the start of this journey to hold distinct personal memories of her own. Your sister has built a full adult life in which you no longer occupy a central place in daily events. A decade is plenty of time for a family to completely rebuild its daily household routines. Letters from your mother grow significantly shorter as her own life fills with new day-to-day events. She continues writing every week, describing a world you no longer directly belong to. Her letters touch on school concerts, neighbor house repairs, and other small details of everyday American life. The heartache at this stage stems not from anger, but from realizing how independently your family now functions. You watch the creation of a version of your family that no longer requires your physical presence day to day. It is especially hard learning about family celebrations from photos that arrive weeks after the event took place. Birthdays and graduations become history long before the snapshots ever reach your hands. You collect these photos and store them inside a permitted plastic bin in your cell. They form a private chronicle of someone else's life, one you share only a formal, indirect connection to. 15-minute phone calls become the only bridge between two entirely different realities. You notice how the slang and speech cadence of your loved ones change during these brief sessions. Each visit requires more effort to find common ground for a normal, open conversation. Time inside prison feels frozen, while outside, it moves at an unrelenting pace. You become a shadow in the story of your own family, which continues to be written without your direct involvement. Level 6. Life without parole. A sentence of life without the possibility of parole strips the family of any lingering hope. The absence of a release date forces loved ones to mourn someone who is still physically alive. You will never sit around the dinner table with your family on Thanksgiving again. Some families turn visits into a sacred ritual that endures for decades, regardless of the obstacles. Staying connected becomes a form of resistance against a harsh sentence that tries to permanently sever all family bonds. Other relatives gradually drift away to protect their own mental health and guard against constant, heavy grief. Endless mourning for a living person drains the mental bandwidth needed to carry on with a normal life. Your mother faces the brutal reality that she may pass away before your time inside ever ends. Your final conversation might happen over a collect call rather than in the warmth of a home living room. Her frail voice over the receiver will be your last memory of the person who gave you life. Losing parents from 400 miles away is the single hardest ordeal for anyone serving a life sentence. Being unable to attend their funeral leaves a deep wound that never truly heals over a lifetime. Siblings feel a complex mix of relief and guilt for being able to live their own free lives. They enjoy their freedom, yet feel ashamed in front of you for every happy moment they experience. This emotional knot is rarely discussed openly, even in the closest and most candid family relationships. Admitting to personal joy feels like a betrayal towards someone locked away in a cramped cell. Letters become the sole record proving a bond still exists between two completely different worlds. Prison bureaucracy controls every step, turning personal feelings into objects of inspection and strict regulation. Memories of the past slowly fade, leaving behind only cold facts from your former civilian life. Studying the rules for filing appeals, you come to realize the legal complexity of any attempt to overturn this sentence. Level 7. Media coverage and public backlash. A high-profile criminal case brings a public shame that is vastly different from private family grief. Your sister's coworkers find out about the situation from the CNN Evening News before she even gets a chance to tell them. Your mother's name appears in the New York Times, right alongside your incarcerated last name. The label, Mother of a Criminal, follows her into every establishment she used to visit as an ordinary citizen. Some families change their last names entirely to protect themselves from relentless public pressure and threats. They do this out of sheer exhaustion from constantly being publicly tied to a crime they had no part in. Strangers on social media begin harassing relatives, leaving hundreds of angry comments under family photos. Society refuses to see the nuance in feelings held by people who love a relative while simultaneously being horrified by their action. Your mother learns to ignore online comments, while your sister changes her personal cell phone number. They come to realize the cruelty of the public sphere, which craves only simple hot takes and swift blanket condemnation. Some family members publicly disown you, issuing official statements through local press releases. They do this both out of safety concerns and out of genuine horror at what was done. Public pressure destroys whatever fragments of family ties remained intact through the previous hard years. Reporters stake out your parents' house, trying to grab exclusive comments or photos from the family archive. Your family's private life becomes public property, stripping them of their right to grieve in peace. The attorney advises everyone to refrain from making any public statements until all potential court proceedings are finished. Letters sent to prison are inspected with extra scrutiny due to heightened attention from law enforcement. You feel crushed by guilt over the heavy burden that has fallen onto the shoulders of completely innocent people. Your name becomes a household word in the local community, evoking only negative associations among locals. Support drops to a minimum, leaving the family in complete social isolation from their community. Level 8. Coming home and adjusting to a new reality. If you return home after 15 years, the family waiting for you is no longer the one you left behind. Time on the outside didn't freeze while you were serving time in a maximum security state facility. Your grown niece, who now has a child of her own, has to build a relationship with you virtually from scratch. Her memories of you are fragmented and shaped mostly by stories told by older family members. Your sister worked through her grief and built a new life that cannot be rolled back. The long-awaited reunion rarely plays out, like a touching scene from a Hollywood movie about a happy homecoming. The meeting is filled with awkwardness, long silences, and cautiousness in every spoken word and glance. You are essentially two strangers attempting to slip into the roles of a past civilian life. Rebuilding trust takes years of consistent effort, with no guarantee of ever reaching the level you had before. Some families view the past as a healed wound, while others discover a chasm too deep to bridge. Relationships can turn politely formal, limited to brief visits during major family holidays. You face severe disorientation from tech advancements, grocery prices, and shifting social norms. Using a modern $800 smartphone presents a learning curve, as technology has taken a massive leap forward. The unwritten rules around the dinner table have changed, and you have to learn them anew. Like a foreign language, even a patient family cannot fully bridge this gap in your personal social experience. You make rookie mistakes while taking your first steps in a modern American society that feels entirely new to you. People around you remember your past, creating added tension when you try to land a job. Finding even a minimum wage job at $15 an hour becomes a daunting task because of your record. A parole officer monitors your movements, keeping you constantly aware of the legal limits of your new status. Freedom demands high accountability and a constant need to prove your ability to live by the rules of the civilian world. Level completed. Before we jump into the next tier of the simulation, drop a subscribe so you never miss a new story. Thanks for being here and watching now. Let's get back to it. Level 9. Factors that preserve or destroy family bonds. The outcome for any given family depends on more than just the severity of the offense or sentence. The primary factor is the relative's ability to hold two conflicting truths without feeling forced to reconcile them. Families that stay connected are able to love the person while simultaneously feeling horrified by their action. They maintain contact despite the constant strain that persists over many years. Families that fall apart reach a breaking point where holding two opposing feelings becomes impossible. Continued support begins to feel like a betrayal of the victim or an invalidation of their own deep grief. Neither response represents a moral failure or a sign of cold-heartedness on the part of the relatives. They are simply different answers to an excruciating question every family in this situation is forced to face. Each family seeks its own balance between love, a desire for justice, and its own psychological survival. Therapy sessions at $150 an hour sometimes help loved ones cope with this weight. Support groups for families of prisoners become a safe haven where people can share their experiences openly. There, people find understanding, free from the judgment they constantly run into in everyday life. Accepting the situation doesn't mean pardoning the crime, but it allows people to hold on to their humanity toward the prisoner. Walking away from support is often the only way relatives can protect their own mental health from complete collapse. Social pressure in the U.S. creates additional hurdles to maintaining healthy relationships with the incarcerated. Economic factors also play a major role in a family's ability to maintain consistent contact. Low-income families are more likely to lose touch due to a lack of funds for travel and phone calls. Wealthier families have more resources to secure quality legal defense and maintain contact. Nevertheless, The emotional burden remains equally heavy across all demographics, regardless of wealth. The final choice each family makes dictates the future for both the inmate and their loved ones. Level 10. Final thoughts and reflections on the first call. That initial late-night phone call is merely the start of a long and extraordinarily difficult trial. It sets off a chain of events that permanently changes the internal dynamics of your entire family. How the story unfolds depends on numerous factors, many of which are impossible to fully control. Understanding these levels helps reveal the depth of what everyone involved in this complex process goes through. Parents, brothers, sisters, and children carry their own invisible burden, right alongside the inmate. The American justice system impacts millions of families, creating complex social and emotional ripple effects. Behind every statistic lie real human lives, fractured bonds, and thousands of lost opportunities. Holding on to your humanity under these conditions is a true test for every member of society. If this detailed breakdown changed your perspective on the consequences of that first late-night call, leave your thoughts below. Drop a comment under this piece with the topic you'd like to see us unpack next time. Your engagement helps us create high-quality analytical content for our regular audience. We will continue exploring complex social and legal topics that touch people's real lives. Thank you for tuning into this important and deep analytical deep dive into family dynamics. Feel free to share this text with anyone who might find it helpful or insightful. Remember that standing by someone during tough times is the most precious gift you can offer a loved one. Treasure your family bonds and try to find common ground, even in the hardest life situations. Our exploration shows that love and patience are capable of overcoming the most daunting trials life throws at us. We look forward to your feedback and new ideas for future posts in the comments. Until next time on our platform dedicated to the important social issues of today. Wishing everyone peace, harmony, and good health in your daily family life.